Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal brother. I can tell you right out the gate, you are in for a treat this evening. Where do you begin with what this brother is all about? He is considered to be America's number one leadership life trainer. He is an author of 50 books, 35 of which have been bestsellers. He has been named on a number of occasions the top speaker in America, Business Leader of the Year, Community Leader of the Year, Diversity Leader of the Year. He has won a Veteran Impact Award, Civility Business Person of the Year. He's been considered one of the top 30 business influencers, named one of the top 30 motivational speakers in the world. And even to that, and that's his most recent accomplishment, the top 10 motivational speakers in the world in 2025. So this brother is doing it all. I mean, he's trying to impact lives, not just locally but all across the world. But his most important title, ladies and gentlemen, is that he's a man of God, and he's taking time out of his very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of his journey with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting others. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Dr. Will Moreland. Dr. Moreland, thank you so much for being on the show.
Man, I am so excited to be here, man. I just want to first say thank you so much for what you're doing and how you're impacting the world and even creating this space for individuals like me to come and share a little bit of our insights and a little bit of our story and journey. So, man, I am tremendously excited about being here.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So before we jump into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Dr. Will Moreland.
Yeah, so I was just doing an interview the other day, and I was telling them that as I get older, the story gets kind of longer. So I'll try to shorten it up, right? But I'm originally from a little city called Compton, California. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Compton, California, but that's where I grew up, raised by my grandmother and my mom. And I tell people Compton back then was very interesting. I say it was the best of times and the worst of times. If you know anything about Compton, when I was growing up there, they said it was literally the worst city in America. But at the same time, it was just home to me. Like I didn't realize that it had this stigma. It was just where grandma's house was. It was just where I went to school and where all of my friends were and where all our neighbors were. So it wasn't this, atrocious place to me. It was just what I called home. When you hear the gunshots, you just knew to duck. You just knew not to walk down that street or whatever. But it wasn't like this bad place. It wasn't until I moved away, and I would tell people, "Oh, I'm from Compton." "Oh, you from Compton?" And so, but I had a wonderful, I had a wonderful upbringing as it relates to being raised by my grandmother. She gave me all the necessary foundational things that you need growing up: love, a strong foundation in God, teaching us, values and integrity. She was very community oriented, so I got to see her in that element. She was a great giver, so she just gave me a great example of what it meant to be a productive citizen. And my life kind of changed when, and we'll probably talk about that, but it kind of changed when she died. It kind of left me without boundaries, and so I found myself, from the age of 12, 13, getting in trouble and being in and out of trouble with the law until around the age of 18. The last time I was in trouble with the law, um, I was getting ready to get sent off to one of those nice facilities in California, aka jail. And this judge gave me an opportunity. He says, "Mr. Moreland, you're headed nowhere fast and you just turned 18. If I sentence you today, this record will be with you for the rest of your life. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to go home for 2 weeks. And when you come back, I want you to tell me what you're going to do with your life and why I shouldn't send you to one of these nice facilities." And I'll be honest with you, man, I left there and my mind was, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So this is my going away party. I'm about to go party for 2 weeks because I'm getting ready to get locked away for a little bit of time. And as God would have it, 2 days before I was supposed to return back to court, I'm walking in the mall and a army recruiter by the name of Corey Oliver comes up to me and says, have you ever thought about going to the Army? And I looked at him, and in that moment, I didn't realize the impact of that question. But I just kind of have, if you've ever had a feeling in life like, oh man, this is it, this is opportunity. I at least knew that, man, if I tell the judge I'm going to the Army, he'll probably go for that. So that was my game plan. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll go. And so I ended up telling Corey my situation, and he says, okay, I'll go to court with you. Let the judge know that that you're enlisted into the Army. I did that. That judge told me, he says, Mr. Moreland, I think you're making a very wise decision. I wish you the best in life. Don't get into any more trouble. And so from there, I joined the military, and that's for me where life really began to take form and shape. I joined the military. I now get some standards. I get some mentors in life. I start getting into personal development. And I'll stop there because that's kind of where, when I got into personal development, life began to shift for me.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I love your intro here, and like you said, we kind of tapped into part of what I wanted to discuss with you about, of course, is what was it like for you growing up, and
Yeah.
so I think it is interesting that you made mention, like you said, coming from Compton, how Compton, as we all know, is portrayed across the TV and movies and things of that nature, and of course, who we first think of, if you're depending on what age group you're in, if you're in my age group, of course my first, knowledge of Compton was back in the days of NWA, and
Yeah.
if you fast forward to today's times, when people think of Compton, they think of Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick
So
Lamar.
it's like
Yeah.
it just kind of
Yeah.
depends on who you're talking to. But one of the things that I do appreciate that you made mention of, and people don't understand it unless they've been in that situation, is
Yeah.
that when you grow up in an inner city location, and the television and the media portrays it in one way, how when you're in that environment, it was just home to me.
It's just,
It was just what it was. We never thought of it at the level that others from outside that scenario, outside of that scene, thought of it. I mean, I myself, I grew up in Chicago,
right. Right.
so it's the same kind of
Southside.
thing. If I
Yeah.
go, you're up Southside Chicago, so you get away out of Chicago into an area that people are not familiar with that, and then you say Chicago, and I can even still remember, especially in college, of course, being around our non
Yeah.
people of
Yeah.
color,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first thing that they wanted to know was, hey, do you know where Cabrini Green is?
Right.
Do you know,
Right.
or, want to familiar, want to know, do I know the people on Good Times, and all that.
Exactly.
It's just all
Exactly.
of the traditional stereotypes of where you live.
Right.
So, but yeah, I identify with the fact that it's always challenges in life, that we go through, things that we deal with along the way that in the moment it doesn't necessarily make sense. Like you said, you had some troubles early on, some challenges that almost led you
Yeah.
down a path of potentially being locked up. But then, and like I said, as you're going through those moments, you don't really know why it's happening. But when you fast forward to the present time, you start reflecting back, which is why I like to have these conversations
Yeah.
early on. Is like you kind of begin to connect the dots. You kind of begin to piece it together and say, you know what? I had to go through what I had to go through. I had to experience what I had to experience. I needed to meet this person, or I needed to meet that person, because if these events, if these moments in time don't happen, even if they were some of my more challenging moments, then I might not be where I am today. I might not be this world renowned speaker, having the ability to connect with audiences of all types all around the world. In order for me to be relatable to them, I'm able to do so because I'm able to tap into some real life experiences, not just somebody who just happens to have read a lot of books per se, but I can actually incorporate the mixture of the academic and the real life type of scenario. So that's what I feel from you in your sharing. And then even and even before I had a chance to personally meet you in this format,
Yeah.
just following you along social media and seeing the things that you do, it resonated the same way. So it's like, this is a real brother that we got here, and this is why we got to have voices like yours to be present in platforms like this, to just give us an opportunity to be exposed to individuals like yourself who did the work, put in the effort. Didn't say that everything was always smooth going and anything, but that you can come up out of what might otherwise be some dark moments, some dark times, and persevere and actually make impact in the lives of many, as you have been doing. So I definitely appreciate just right out the gate how you're dropping gems and sharing like you are, man, because this is good stuff. This is good stuff. Um, so with that said, Dr. Moreland, you know, as we go through life, of course, we start off with our childhood, we venture off into adulthood, and the experiences don't go away. They, matter of fact, they start to increase in you know, in terms of frequency, and more so than that, if you live long enough, at some point you are going to hit some experiences in life that those storms, those moments are gonna they're just gonna knock you off your feet, so to speak. They're gonna tag you in a way that you might find yourself questioning, you know, how am I gonna get through this? This is a little bit heavier. This is a little bit weightier than what I'm normally accustomed to. Maybe I've been used to being able to navigate my way through some challenges, but every now and then you will get hit with a storm that isn't so easy for you to get out of. You can't throw money at it. You can't make a phone call and get out of it. It's something that might seem to be you know, impossible to overcome. So with that said, if you would share with us a time where that's exactly what you felt like. I'm in this situation. I'm facing a moment in time that I don't see a way out of this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Obviously, you're here today, so we can trust that God made a way for you. But maybe back then you had your doubts, you had your concerns. So if you would walk us through what that experience was like for you and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that.
That's a great question. When I think about it and I think upon it, you're absolutely right. You go through life and growing up in Compton, I can see today that that was like my training ground, right? And so I travel. I have the opportunity to travel all around the world, and I meet people from different backgrounds and from all socioeconomic levels. And I believe that God allowed me to start off in a place that they call the worst city in America. And so now my framework when I'm talking to people, it's if I can start off from what they consider the worst, then that means where you're starting from, you can make it, right? And so when I think about the probably the hardest thing that I've faced is looking at myself and telling myself that God still had a plan for me. And it was earlier on in my military career. I just joined. I'm this young kid. I'm leaving California for the very first time. I'm getting on a plane for the very first time. I'm getting ready to see something new for the very first time. And you can be in a new place, but have an old mindset. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was in a new place, I was in a new environment, but I had an old mindset. And so my first duty station was in Germany. So here I am, not only in a different state, but now in a different country, a different culture. I'm 8,000 miles away physically, but mentally, I'm still on the streets of Compton. And so, as I'm navigating and operating and dealing with people, even though I'm in this new environment, I'm still treating it like I'm back in the hood. And so, I'll give you a quick little story that's kind of funny. Um, when I was in this new spot, you meet people from literally all around the country. They've joined the military from all around the country. One of the questions that they would ask is, where are you from? Now, me and you sitting here talking, that's a normal question. Me and you now today understand they're asking me geographically, where am I located from? But in my world of Compton, when someone said, where are you from? They were asking you what gang you're from.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I thought people were asking me. Where I'm from, man, where you from? And so I was always hostile, right? I'm always hostile. And so I come to this one situation where I get into a fight with this gentleman, pretty bad fight, another soldier, and they're getting ready to kick me out. They're getting ready to kick me out the Army. And there was a gentleman by the name of Command Sergeant Major Babs. He was our leading non-commissioned officer. And he pulls me into his office and he says, man, I read your record, man. I know where you're from. I know you're from Compton. He says, but here's the question for you. He says, if I kick you out, what are you going to do? Where are you going back to? What's going to become of your life? I was like, It is what it is. That was my mindset back then. It is what it is. And he says, I'm not going to kick you out. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you come work for me. I'm going to mentor you. And this was a pivotal time in my life because I had a choice to make. Was I now going to take this second opportunity that was presented before me to change my life, or was I going to fumble it? And so, right then and there, I had to make up in my mind, was I going to create this new version of myself, or was I going to allow this old version to take me down? And before I left his office, he asked me a question. He says, this is what I want to know. In 5 years, where do you see yourself? In 5 years, where do you see yourself? Now, to be honest with you, I had never thought about my future. I had never thought about even becoming an adult. I had never thought about having a family. I never pictured myself even seeing the age of 30 because my best friend Donnie got killed in front of me at the age of 16, and I thought that was the plight of my life. Even though I was in the military now, I didn't have vision for my life. I didn't have this far reaching vision for my life. And so when he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? At that time, I'm 18, so he's asking me, where do you see yourself at 23? I had never imagined seeing myself at 23. And I said, to be honest, I don't know. He says, well, I want you to go home this weekend and I want you to think about that. Where do you see yourself? So that Monday morning, I come back and I go to his office and he says, okay, what did you come up with? And I had two things. I said, okay, Sergeant Major, I want to be the best soldier I can be, and I want to get into school. I want to get into college. He says, I can help you with that. He he connects me with a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Sane. He said, Sergeant Sane, I want you to mentor him. He wants to become the best soldier he can, and he wants to get into college. And that started my journey. These two gentlemen, which happened to be African American men at that time, these were probably, in my life, um, probably two of the most, prominent black men I had, been associated with. I knew my father, but really didn't grow up with him, and then really didn't have any relationship with other male members of my family or anything like that. So these became like really my first real, in your face type of mentors. And true to their word, they got me enrolled in college. They began to mentor me. And that was the change for me. And once I got into college, I started reading. I started um, reading personal development books. As a matter of fact, a young lady came up to me. We were in um, public speaking class. And she heard me speak, and I've always had this knack for speaking. It's just my natural gifting. And she heard me speak, and she came to class the next day, and she gifted me this book. And the name of the book was African American Affirmations by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And she says, you need to read this book. I think it will inspire you. And I started reading this book by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And inside this book, it was all these stories of all these amazing African Americans, people like John H. Johnson, people, the CEO of Black Entertainment, Graves. And I'm like, what? Where are these people been? What? I came across a gentleman by the name of Reginald F. Lewis. And so now I'm just fascinated of seeing people who look like me outside of sports, outside of entertainment, do something in life. I was just like blown away. And I ended up reading Reginald F. Lewis' book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And that was the game changer for me. I literally used his book as a blueprint. He said he woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I started waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He said he was a ferocious reader. I started being a ferocious reader, and I just started to blueprint and model. And he became, never met him. As a matter of fact, by the time I got a hold of his book, he had already passed away and died from a brain aneurysm. But his book was a game changer in my life.
Wow, wow. Let me first off start by saying I appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability, and sharing as you are so far, man. This is a phenomenal story, and so many different things that we can pull from this. I think one of the things that stands out to me is the fact that you know you had two separate, what would otherwise have been life changing situations that had you picked the wrong path, um, it goes to the road of nowhere, so to speak.
Yeah.
And ironically, you were prepared to go down that path.
Yeah.
And it was like, but then at the same time before, even though you were willing to, as you said, it is what it is kind of mindset, the people who asked you that question, were offering you this opportunity. They clearly saw something in you that they weren't willing to just let you just
Definitely.
basically throw your life away.
Definitely.
And I think that in itself is just so powerful. Not only from the standpoint that these two, fine gentlemen thought enough of you that they valued your life. They saw worth in you, even when you maybe didn't see it for yourself. They saw it and they refused to give up. And so I say that to say to any men that are tuning in to our episode, definitely keep what Dr. Moreland has said in mind, because we need more of that. There's so many of our young men, and particularly young black men, who don't have that mentor, who don't have that role model, who doesn't have that person who's willing to, be in their corner and be that source of encouragement, that source of support. Even when that young man is, doesn't even care. It'd be real easy for them to just have walked away and been like, well, you don't care, then I don't care.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
sometimes we got to take that extra step and show our support and our concern, just to give that young man a fighting chance. And I'm so thankful.
Let
Yes,
me
go ahead.
interject this. I try to remind people this all the time, because it was true for me and it's true for everybody. Before we got here, God had a plan for us.
Hmm.
And all of us come here as a blank slate. And this is what I try to get people to remember. Our environments, our upbringing plays a huge part. And even though God has a plan for us, the environment that we're released in can influence us in a negative way. Certainly that happened to me. But I try to remind people to look beyond exactly what you're saying, look beyond what you're seeing, and go all the way back to that person's beginning. And so if you think about a baby, babies, we come here as a baby, you come here with a clean slate. Now, if you get released, it's like, I tell people, if you think about a pit bull,
Hmm.
right? A pit bull is going to react according to the trainer. Like a
Right.
pit bull is just a pit bull. No dog is just naturally aggressive. It's your training. It's your environment that you're brought up in. And so I always try to remember that person before they got in trouble, before they made a mistake, God had a plan for them. And if you
Hmm.
can just get them back into alignment, right? The Bible says without a vision, people perish. The reason why I didn't care is because I didn't have a vision.
Hmm.
And so when I go and talk to young men and I go into high schools all across the country, I try to get them back in alignment with their vision. Because if you can get a person in alignment with their vision, that there's a purpose for you. Before you messed up, before you dropped out, before you did whatever you did, there was a purpose for your life. And if we can just get you back on track with that purpose, things can turn around.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to what you just spoke to, just to take it even one step further, this is how God moves.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so valuable to have a relationship with God, because see, he'll look beyond your imperfections. He'll look beyond your blemishes. It's not that he's condoning our sin and
Mm-hmm.
our bad behavior, but he doesn't charge it against us to the point where he's ready to turn his back on us. And he will bring people into your life, people that owe you nothing, that they don't know you from a can of paint, so to speak, but he can bring just the right person
Yeah.
into your life that will speak just the right words that you needed to speak. I mean, because there could have been two different gentlemen that could have said what they said to you, and it not resonated, it not connected with you. He made sure that he brought two brothers who look like
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
to say what they needed to say, introducing you to materials that's going to further affirm what they said, further confirm what they saw in you. And then once you got going, once you took that bite, then now you were just, I can't get enough of it. I think your exact word was, you got ferocious with it. You
Oh
got
man.
ferocious in your reading, you got ferocious in your discipline in terms of when I get up and what I do. And again, having followed you on social media, there's evidence of that. You speak about that all the time, about your routine and that regimen and how important it is to be locked in and focused, because that's how you're able to reach those goals. That's how you're able to connect with the masses as you are able to. Not because you're a superhero, not because you're
Huh?
not vulnerable in any type of way, but you have a system, you have a focus, you're locked in. But part of that had to start with you, as you stated, having that vision, understanding that you actually have what it takes to make it, regardless of where you came from or where people think where you came from meant that somehow that you had a predetermined story as to how it was going to end for you.
Yeah.
Because you traditionally say black man from Compton, or
Right.
black man from any inner city
Right.
type of setting.
Doc. I mean, when you look at where I come from, like I say, the life expectancy um, of people I grew up with, it was short. Like I've I've attended so many funerals of people that I've went to high school with that I grew up with, and so I'm very cognizant to your point that it could have been any two other gentlemen, and my life could have went any. Paul said it, except for the grace of God, there go I, and that's why I'm. You said it earlier. The reason why I'm so passionate about the work that I do is because I didn't read this in a book. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is my lived experience. And so when I say I really do believe you can change your life, I really do believe that. When I say you're just one choice away from changing your life, I really do believe that. When I say that you haven't gotten off the path, you haven't gotten off so far off the path where you can't be brought back and God can use your life. I'm a living testimony of this. And so when I tell people, they ask me about the passion that I come with, and they say, man, you seem like you believe this stuff. I believe it because it's my lived experience. When I realized that I had a choice. I didn't know I had a choice. I didn't know I had options.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't know I had options. When I found out, I was reading this book. I started reading Think and Grow Rich, and they said, man, you can change your life by changing your thoughts, because if you change your thoughts, you'll change your actions. If you change your actions, you'll change your outcomes. I thought that, to your point, that I was in prison. Like, oh, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
black man in America, growing up in the worst city. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to sell drugs. You're supposed to gang bang. You're supposed to either get killed or get arrested, and that's it. That's the merry-go-round. But then, wait a minute. My start doesn't determine my finish.
Hmm.
I get to determine my finish. When I realized that, wait a minute, I didn't get to choose what color I am. I didn't get to choose what sex I am. I didn't get to choose who my parents were. I didn't get to choose the location. All of that was chosen by somebody else. But the way I finished this life, the way I finished this story, you mean I have a say so in that? You mean that I can determine which way my life goes? Once I realized that, and I started actually seeing it. Like, I started actually seeing it. Like, wait a minute, I have more peace now. I have more joy
Mm.
now. Like, oh man, life is wonderful. I can go take a walk in the park. Man, this is nice. When I started seeing that, I'm like, oh, I do want to live until I'm 70. I do want to live until I'm 80. I do want to see 90. I do want to see 100. I do want to see. I now had a vision. Like
Mm-hmm.
before, I said I had nothing to live for. I had nothing to live for. Once you get something to live for, now you can go forward. If you don't have nothing to live for, you don't see the reason to go forward. So once I saw the reason to go forward, oh, I'm married now. Oh, we can build this life. Oh, I got kids now. I want to see them get older. Oh, I got a grandbaby now. I want to see her get older. I have something to look forward to. So that's what energizes me to keep moving forward.
And that is awesome, man. And like you said, that's the exact mindset that we all want to have. We all, and that's, to my listeners, that's regardless of what your background, your ethnicity is, or whatever. But in this moment, forgive us, but as black men, it's no secret what the typical outcomes, what the typical bar is set for us, and we have to understand that that we have definitely much more value, much more worth, much more to live for, And if we don't know what that is, if we're struggling with that, that there are people out there that we can get connected with that would be more than happy. The brothers like yourself, the brothers like you made, that you met while in the military. There are men, and in some cases, there are even women who will pour into you, who can see that value in you, and you just need somebody to make that connection. Somebody to, not so much a connection in terms of a quote unquote hookup, but to connect you in terms of you being able to see and embrace again, that value that you have inside of you, embrace, the purpose of what you're even here for. Because going back to that relationship with God, it's one thing for us to one day get a job and work a career and all of that, and nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, before this time on earth comes to an end for us, we want to ultimately be able to be walking in our actual purpose. Like, why were we created to be here? And don't be surprised if the purpose is completely opposite from that job that you worked. The very thing that you thought you would never do, whether it's speaking, whether it's being an author, whether it's mentoring or whatever. Don't be surprised if that's what you ultimately are purposed to do. You just have to be able to make that connection. And part of it, of course, is in a relationship with God, and then allowing him to connect you with those people, bring those people into your space, bring those people into your circle. And understand too, in that process, as some people are being ushered into your circle, there might be some people who are going to get ushered out of your circle because they're not meant to go where he's taking you. So there's a little bit of both. But you'd rather it be that way than thinking that the only way that we go out is, like you said, whether through violence or through going to jail or things like that. There's plenty of more outcomes. There's plenty of more paths that are in contrast to the things that are stereotypically applied to us, particularly us as black men. So I appreciate you sharing as you have here, man, because we don't have enough of these conversations, and then you combine that with today's times and all of the craziness that's going on in the world and the things that are trying to be taken from us, educationally speaking, and out of books and things of that nature, trying to deny us of, having even access to who we are and the greatness that we carry within. You ran off a few people earlier on in the show that I didn't know that this brother was doing this, and I didn't know that this person was doing that, and I didn't know he was doing that. And oh, by the way, he wasn't in sports and he wasn't in entertainment. Nothing wrong with those genres, but don't be putting us in a box like that's the only thing that we're good at doing is singing and dancing and shooting the ball. We can do that too, but we can do so much more, and we have done so much more, whether we've gotten credit for it or not. And that could easily be another show for another day. But the possibilities are endless. And when you understand that you come from royalty, from a royal line, then you'll conduct yourself accordingly, and you'll like you said, you'll want to have a reason to live and be around to experience it all. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and I know we're not talking about this, but I just want to interject this for our listening audience. If somebody's trying to take something from you, you then have to ask yourself, why are they trying to take that from me? Mm-hmm. Right? If they're trying to take certain books from me, why? What's so interesting about that book that they're trying to take it from me? If they're trying to take my right to vote, what's so powerful about voting that they're trying to take it from me? See, if it wasn't a value, people don't come into your house and look for the stuff that's not valuable. Right. They look for the stuff that's valuable. And so if someone's trying to say, you know what, these collection of books I don't want you to read, the first thing we got to start saying is, wait a minute, why wouldn't you want me to read that book? Why not that book? Why this particular book? Why this particular book you're afraid for me to read? Why this particular act, out of all the acts I could do as a citizen, why would you want me to? You didn't try to take volunteering from me. You're right. You didn't right. say no more volunteering. Y'all can't volunteer no more. You said I can't vote. It must be a power behind voting if you're trying to take, because if voting had no power, why would you be trying to take it from me? If reading had no power, and I know this is not where the show is, but our people, our ancestors, oh, you didn't want to teach me to read. You didn't want to teach me to write. There must be some power in reading and writing that I'm missing, that just off of its intrinsic value, that it must be something deeper. It must be something deeper. If that's what you tried to keep from me, out of all the things you can keep from me, you said, don't teach them how to read. Don't teach them how to write. There must be a power in that. So I want those that are listening to understand that. Whenever somebody's trying to take something from you, it must be valuable, because they wouldn't take it from you if it wasn't valuable.
Absolutely. If they, like you said, whether they're trying to take it from you or if they're trying to show you that it's there and they want you to get exposed to it like your mentors do. There's a reason for that because there's value there. And I don't know if you paid attention, for our title of our show tonight, everything that we've spoken of is in alignment with that. If you knew the
If you knew the
truth,
truth, if
if
you
you
knew the
knew the
truth.
truth of what you had inside of you, the power that you had, if you knew the truth about the things that are, being looked at to be taken from you, if you knew why that was happening, then you would understand. Then the light bulb would come on. You'd be like, wait a minute, I might need to pivot a little bit differently here. I might need to think about this thing a little bit different. I might need to lock in and focus a little bit
Right.
different because now that I know the truth, now that somebody has brought it to my attention, oh, I didn't, because you even shared that, like, I didn't know these people existed. I didn't know that I had options. I didn't know. I thought it was just this. But once you know that truth, once that truth is exposed to you, once that revelation is brought forth to you, whether, again, it's in a book, it's in an individual sharing with you, and of course, the revelation that comes with, of course, God's word as well, when you start seeing that truth, the empowerment that begins, the confidence, the courage, the strength that begins to arise within you is just, it's just phenomenal. It begins to literally just drip off of you. It's not a cockiness, but it's again, it's a confidence. It's a strength, not a physical per se strength, but a mental strength, an emotional strength. I feel empowered. I feel like nothing is too, big for me to be able to accomplish.
Right.
Nothing is too out of my reach for me to do. And these are all of the things that you're speaking of, not only tonight, but that you speak of all the time on your different platforms and in your books and things of that nature. So, yeah, you're not off track with this. You are right
All
on
right.
track with what we're talking about this evening because this is the conversations that we need to be having. And again, appreciate your transparency as you're sharing because this is what we need to be hearing. This is what we need to be talking about, especially in the days and times that we're dealing with right now. So I
Yeah.
thank you for that. So, Dr. Moreland, we've obviously talked about some heavy stuff here, you know, and and the reality is that sometimes things are really heavy that we deal with, and then there's other times where life is just life, and we find ourselves dealing with certain challenges or what have you. So, with that said, what I'm curious to know from you is, when you do find yourself facing challenging situations, moments of adversity, again, whether it's something major or if it's just day to day life and type stuff, what is it that you personally like to do? What's kind of your regiment, your routine that you like to do that kind of helps you process and deal with challenging moments of adversity?
Yeah, that's good, man. I was just talking to a buddy about that the other day, and one of the things that I commonly like to do is I'll go for a walk and just to clear my mind, clear my space. But more than that, I go on a walk just to remind myself, that God didn't bring you this far to leave you. And, you know, when I think about some of the, where the world is right now and some of the challenges that we're facing right now, it's so important for us as believers to do exactly what we say we are. Believe. And what do we believe? We believe that, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. We believe that all things are working together for our good. We believe that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. And so when I go on these walks, I remind myself of this because that's what the Bible says. It says, remind yourself of the faithfulness of God. Remind yourself of the goodness of God. Remind yourself that goodness and mercy are following you all the days of your life. Remind yourself that he never said it was going to be peachy cream. He never said that you weren't going to face. We say no weapon formed against us will prosper. That means the weapon is going to be formed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to prosper. He says every tongue that rises up against you. So that means there are going to be people lying on you and calling you this and that. It's going to happen. And so I try to remind myself, Will, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The Bible says, count it all joy when you find yourself in diverse temptations, right? Count it all joy because the working of your faith works patience. And patience, you want to be entire, wanting nothing. And so I just try to just settle myself. And here's one thing that I tell myself all the time, and I tell everybody else I come in contact with: whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, it may be a surprise to you. It may have caught you off guard, but it's not a surprise to God. It didn't catch God off guard. And so those are those moments that you need to peace be still, and just bring yourself to a quiet place. And there's power in the questions that you ask. And so I allow myself to, okay, God, I didn't know that was going to happen. So what's our plan here? What's our plan here? Because I know you have a plan, because according to Jeremiah 29 and 11, you say, I still have the same thoughts that I have towards you. And so, in the beginning of the year, we all start with these, these statements, right? This is going to be my year, and da 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 da, right? And then something happens, and we forget all about that. Well, I thought you said this was going to be your year. I thought you said this was, this. Didn't you say God whispered something to you back in December, back in November, and said this was going to be your year? None of that's changed. And so we got to remind ourselves, you know what? I was just doing this with our team. We had some goals that we set in January for this year. We had some goals. And I don't care what's going on in the world, what's going on in America, we're going to stick to our goals. We said this how much we wanted to produce. We said this how much revenue we wanted to generate. That's what we're exactly going to do. We're not coming off of our confession of faith because everybody else is going haywire and going crazy. Because my thing is, if God be for me, who could be against me? And so I just go on these walks, man, and just try to remind myself, number one, who I am, and then whose I am. And when I remind myself, by the time I get off that walk and having this pep talk with myself about who I am and whose I am, I'm a child of the King. I'm God's child. I'm his son. I'm one of his favorites. Man, get your butt back in that office and go to work. And so that's what I do, man. When I find myself in them challenging situations, man, I remind myself who I am. I'm a child of God, and whose I am. I'm a child of God.
Yeah, I love that, man, and I identify with a lot of what you said. Those walks, I know usually for me it's the walk that I take with my dog every morning, and and those conversations, those pep talks that you
Those
said.
pep
I
talks,
try
man.
to have those pep talks, and you may mention earlier something that I thank God, and remind God of every day is, I don't believe you brought me this far to leave me.
Believe me.
Just when you think that you're facing some moment of challenge of adversity, that why you hitting me with this, I have to take that moment and say, okay, one, is this the first time that I've been facing something challenging? No. And then secondly, the last time that I was facing something challenging, and the time before that, and the time before that, when
We
I
made
trusted
it. We
God
still
to do,
here. Right.
did I make it through? Am I
Right.
still standing upright? I'm still,
Right.
yeah. So now I can give you some countless times where I didn't trust Him,
Yeah.
and I was in a situation and I tried to wing it on my own, and it didn't play out the way. But that was because I was trying to do it without Him. But any time that I brought it to Him and asked Him, as you said, okay, what we doing with this? What's the
What we
plan?
doing?
I don't know what to do with this, but I know you do, and I know, you've always come through all the other times before. Last time I checked, your record was undefeated. It was
Undefeated.
unblemished. So what we doing? Help me with this one.
Man,
And
I love
yeah.
that, man, because that's what I tell people all the time. Everybody that's listening to us right now, you're undefeated. Everything that life has thrown your way, everything that you've been through, the fact that you're listening to us right now means you're
Hmm.
undefeated. And we got to remind ourselves of that. We got to remind
Yes.
ourselves of that we're undefeated. Yeah, maybe knocked down. Yeah, yeah, maybe you had to take a standing 8 count. But man, we're undefeated. If you're listening to us right now, that means everything that life has thrown your way, everything that you've been faced with, all the disappointments, all the mistakes, all the challenges and the obstacles, the fact that you're listening to us right now means you're undefeated.
Yes, it's kind of the transformation that you go through when you stop looking at your storms of life through worldly lenses and instead put on the godly lenses. Seeing the storm the way He sees it, then you understand that that storm, while He may have allowed it to come down your path, it has to get His clearance to come to you. And if He's done that, then it's either setting you up to be blessed or it's setting you up to be a blessing to someone else. So in the stories that you've shared this evening, your environment coming up, yeah, some of it was specifically to bless you, but a good portion of it, it's fair to say half of it was to equip you. You had to go through what you had to go through so you could bless as you blessing people, in these days and times, doing the works that you're doing. And that's why we have to kind of remind ourselves or, that, our storms half the storms, it ain't even about us. So if you get caught up in the pity party and the woe is me and all of that, why is this happening to me? Think about who God is, and again, that He allows certain storms to come our way because He's trying to build up something inside of us. He's trying to elevate us. He's trying to stretch us. He's trying to put us through a spiritual workout that we wouldn't otherwise volunteer for. But He knows what's best for us. He sees the worth. He sees the value. And we've been talking about that throughout the show. Is that, He'll send people that see the value, that see the worth, and they're going to take you and stretch you in ways that you would have never done it yourself.
Yeah.
But because they thought enough and saw that value in you, and you embraced it, you were willing to go for the ride. When you depend, when you lean in and make yourself open to receiving that wisdom, open to receiving that training, open to receiving that development, the outcomes are endless as to what you can do with that, and that's how God works. And our own respective lives, and each of us have a designated purpose, a designated walk that we're supposed to be on. But there's a process to that, and I love how you pointed out. Even you used the example of your own team. Yeah, we came into this year, we had certain goals in mind, and yeah, it's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on. But that's not supposed to be your deterrent from setting your mind on the goals that you have before you, particularly if you say that you are a believer, particularly if you say that you're trusting, God's plans, God's way. It don't matter what's going on if you're trusting what He's got going on, because you should be having a confidence that He's gonna cover you, He's gonna protect you, He's gonna guide your steps, even in the midst of all of that storm. So yeah, you might get bumped a little bit, you maybe get knocked a little bit over here, but at the end of the day, you're not gonna get taken out, you're not gonna get destroyed, you're not gonna get wiped out. You're gonna be able to withstand, you're gonna be able to endure, and in the end, as you come up out of that storm, you're gonna be all right. And yes, and you're going to be blessed for it. You're going to be able to that elevates you one step better for Him to be able to use you in more ways than He's already using you. So we have to be battle tested. We have to go through what we go through. We can't. We got to stop treating God and like a genie in the lamp, or like I want to make a wish and it's supposed to just happen. That all of the things, all of the blessings that we want in life are just supposed to be handed to us. That's just not reality. And it doesn't allow us to have an appreciation not only for the gift, but it doesn't allow us to have an appreciation for whom is responsible for making it happen. So we have to go through it. It's our training ground, if you will. So all of those things you pointed out, and I love that, man. That's good stuff. Good stuff. So, Dr. Moreland, if you had the opportunity, when you think back on all your experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, man, if you had the opportunity to sit across the younger the younger Will before he became Dr. Moreland.
Yeah.
The young man who grew up in Compton, who had a very limited viewpoint, a limited reality of what he thought life was supposed to be. What would you share with him? What your insights, your words of wisdom that you wish he would have known? That you think if he would have had some of that early on in life, he might have been able to navigate things or had a different perspective, or just take into consideration those who are listening. There's some people that's listening in that, they're stuck right now. They don't see their worth. All their lives, or a good portion of their lives, has always been rough. They feel like no matter what they do, it's never enough. They don't know what the vision is. They don't know what the purpose is. They're just feeling hopeless and helpless, and just ready to give up, whatever that means for them. They're ready to give up. What would be your words of encouragement, your words to wisdom to them as well as to the younger Will?
Yeah. So number one, I would tell him everything's going to be okay. A lot of times, as you were just sharing, we think because life seems like it's out of control that we have no control. And so that would be the first thing I would tell him. Everything's going to be okay. The second thing I would tell a younger version of myself, I would challenge him on the choices, just the choices that you're making, that you're one choice away. And to give it a framework for those that are listening to us, there's four things that anybody can do to transform their life. And I call them my 4 P's of transformation. The first thing is I want you to, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, I want you to examine, number one, the places that you're going. Where you find yourself on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, this weekend, whenever you're listening to this, podcast. What's your plans for this weekend? Where are you planning on going? Right? Where are you planning on going? Right? And every weekend, I just want you to take an evaluation like last weekend and the weekend before that. Where did I go? Because where you go, the places you go, is going to result in number two, the people you're hanging out with. Who you hanging out with? Who you hanging out with? The places you go determine the people you're hanging out with. And you've heard this analogy. You're going to be the five. You're going to be the sum total of the five people you hang out with the most. Birds of a feather flock together. And so I want you to really examine the places you're going and the people that you're interacting with, because the people that you're interacting with, number three, are going to impact your philosophy, how you see things, how you see the world. See, back when I was in Compton and hanging out, I hung around people. I would go to the place. I would go to the park. I would go to the park. We would hang out at the park. And at the park, that's where all my buddies were. There was all the homeboys were, the people I was hanging out with the most. But here's the problem. This was their philosophy. They would say things like, me against the world. They would say things like, I ain't got nothing to live for. They would say things like, it is what it is. The conversation that they have. 25 plus years ago, I was sitting in the park, hanging out with those buddies, and a buddy of mine, he looked across the way and he saw a bank, and he says, man, we should go rob that bank. We should go rob that bank. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I was I was like always a calculated type of criminal. And so I'll never forget sitting there in my mind. I didn't say this to them, but in my mind, I'm like, no, that don't sound like a good plan. Just off the cuff, just go rob a bank. That don't sound like, no, that's Fed time right there. I don't know where I get that from or whatever, but I'm like, no, that's different than going to the mall and stealing a couple pair of clothes and going to a little liquor store, stealing some chips. Y'all talking about some serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that day, three of my friends went over there to rob that bank. And I watched them in real time, the police swoop on them, arrest them, saw them get put in handcuffs, saw them get put in that car, and I saw them get sentenced to 25 years in jail. And when I think about the 25 years since that day that I've been living and all the experiences that I've had and all the opportunities that I've had, I think about that one moment, because they were in that place talking to those people and they came up with this warped philosophy. And so I challenge you, your thinking is going to determine everything. Your thinking is going to determine everything. And the people that you hang around the most are going to have a great influence on that. And then the fourth thing is your practices. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? What are your actions every single day? What are your actions every single day? If you think about every action as a seed, every seed is going to return a harvest. And so when you ask yourself, man, what am I doing today? Because it's going to, if I come home and I just go lay on the couch and I go grab some ice cream and some Oreos, those actions are leading me somewhere. In a couple of months, I'm going to start seeing it all over my physical. I'm going to be 25 pounds overweight. I'm going to be 30 pounds overweight. But if every morning, like you said, I go walk the dog, I go drink my water, I get a good breakfast, I listen to some podcasts of motivation on my earphone, that's leading you somewhere. That's going to produce a harvest. And so you got to start asking yourself, man, what are the things that I'm doing today that are going to harvest in my life tomorrow? And then ask yourself, do I want that harvest? Do I want whatever is that what I want? See, if I want some strawberries in my back, I need to go plant strawberries. If I want watermelon, I need to go plant watermelon. If I want tomatoes, I need to go plant tomatoes. Whatever I want to see in my garden, that's what I need to be planting. And so those four things: challenge the places that you're going, challenge the people that you're hanging out with, challenge that philosophy that you're living life with, and look at your daily practices. Those four things, if you bring those into alignment, I start going to better places. I start talking to better people. I start talking to better people. I have a different philosophy. I have a different philosophy. I have different practices. I have different practices. I have different results. And so that's what I would say and offer to those that are listening to us and even my younger self.
Love that. Love that. Um, One of the things I wasn't initially going to ask this question, but to what you
Mm-hmm.
just said, if you had to give for those who are in light of the four P's that you just
Mm-hmm.
gave, if somebody is saying to themselves, you know what, I don't have an official, 4P system, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe somebody that has a 4P system,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the wrong 4P system and they're looking
Yeah.
for a reset. What
Mm-hmm.
would you say is a good starting point? If I don't have a place, where's
Mm-hmm.
the best place to start? If I don't
Yeah.
have people, what's the best people to start looking for,
Yeah.
the best philosophy to embrace
Mm-hmm.
and the best practice to start off with? What would you
Yeah.
say to that?
Yeah. Right where you are, your mind, your mindset. And you may have not been exposed. You may not know everything that's available to you in this world, in this life. And so I would start here. Start asking yourself, what don't I want? If I
Mm-hmm.
don't know exactly what I want, start asking yourself, because that's where I start. What I put out, I pulled out a piece of paper, and this is what I said. You know what? Okay, I don't want life to be a struggle. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want life to be a struggle. I don't want to go to the store and have to barter with, if I buy this, I'm not going to be able to pay my cell phone. If I pay my cell phone, I'm not going to be able to get gas. I didn't want life to be this difficult mathematical problem. Other thing was, I didn't want unhealthy relationships in my life. I didn't want unhealthy relationships in my life. And so I started this little list. It was about 4 or 5 things on that list of things that I did not want. And here's the funny thing about life, this is what God will do. Just like He started bringing those individuals into my life to start guiding me, that's what will happen. Different certain people, the Bible says it like this: time and chance will happen to us all. And so start with your mind, just wanting something different, believing. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to know all how it's going to work out. Don't don't get twisted with all of that. Like, but how am I going to do? Don't worry about the how. All I want you to focus on is the what. What is it that I want in my life? You know what? I'm looking around. I don't want to. I don't want to live up in this one bedroom house, this one bedroom apartment, cramped up anymore. You know what? I don't want to be riding on a bus, or I don't want to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. And just start with what you don't want. Start with what you don't want, and believe that God is going to start putting people in your life, put information. We're now living in the most amazing time to be on the planet. We have access to all these resources. Like, when me and you were growing up, we didn't have access to all these resources where we could pick up our phone and literally, right? You can, you know, you can take this device right here and Google it. I want to better my life, and Google will come up with articles and all type of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I live in dot 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 dot. Where are some mentors? What are some places I can go? And they'll start popping up all these different places where you can go. Remember, places, changing the places. You know what? I'm gonna go to the library because I'm almost assured the gangbangers are not at the library. I'm almost assured the drug dealers aren't at the library. Right? I'm almost assured that. I'm going to go to this community center. I'm going to, right, use this power that you have. Find somebody that you respect, a teacher, a mentor, a pastor, a business person in the community, and just say, hey, can I sit down with you, once a week for 15, 20 minutes and just kind of talk out some things. Here's my philosophy. This is what I've been thinking, and just get some wisdom, just get some insight. And if you willing to do that, this is what I know about life. This is what I'm assured about life. Life will give you what you order. Life will give you what you order. And so if you put into the universe, if you put into the space that, you know what, I want my life to be different. Now, with saying that, I want you to know it's not going to be all peachy cream. I remember when I wanted initially to change my life. Um, the gang that I was a part of, they didn't want to let me out the gang, and I remember going to talk to what we would call our big OGs, our big homies, and I said, "Hey man, this is not my boy. My friend that just got killed in front of me." And I said, "Man, this not for me, man. This not for me." And I remember my buddy telling me, he's like, "I can't I can't tell everybody how they should feel about your decision. I support your decision, but I can't promise you that when they see you on the block and when they see you on the street, they're not going to try to press you." And so for almost a year, I literally had to sneak around my hood and sneak around my neighborhood, hiding from the dudes I used to hang out with because I knew they were going to try to pull me back into that. And it was hard. It was pressing. And so anything that's worth having is going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. And you may, have to make some changes. At every point in my life, I had to make changes. I remember when I got into the military, I was hanging out with a guy, and once again, philosophy, what we were talking about and where our lives were headed wasn't positive. And so when I Sergeant Major said, "What do you want to do with your life?" Like, I immediately had to stop hanging out with him because we didn't see eye to eye anymore. And it was painful. It was hurt. Even my boy, we hung out all the time. But I knew that at that point I wasn't strong enough to hang out with him. I wasn't. He had more influence on me. He had
Mm-hmm.
more influence on me. I wasn't strong enough, so I just had to cold turkey cut and stop hanging out with him. So that's what I would. That's what I would say.
I love that what you how you broke that down. Because of course you used the example about how it was difficult to pull away from the gang, even though you said, "Hey, I want out," and how you had those struggles. Having to sneak around and all of that, and even when you shared the example about your buddy in the military, because that's real talk about life in general. What that when you're trying to make that change, whether it's like you said, in my people, in my places, my philosophies, and just even when you taking another level, when you become a believer, there's some things that you have to let go, and it's not going to be always easy, and you have to
It's not
understand that they're
easy.
going to be. The separation is not just because of where you're trying to go. It's also that separation becomes necessary because if you don't separate yourself, particularly from those things that are toxic, particularly from those things or those people who have a great influence on you, uh, you'll be vulnerable to slip back into it,
Yeah.
and you won't make the progression that you were hoping to make. You won't get to those places that you hope to get to. You won't be able to impact the philosophies that you were hoping to aspire to grasping hold to. You won't be able to embrace the new practices that you're trying to replace the old practice. So if I
Right.
watch a little too much television, you know, if I don't discipline myself to turn it off, then I might not be as disciplined to start practice exchanging the TV time for some reading the book time, or reading the word time, or the places that I hang out with, that while they may be fun and full of people that I enjoy being around, if they're not talking about forward moving, if they're not talking about the things that are on my list of what I want in life, or the things that are on my list, and I love that you put that down. Like, when you don't, even if you don't know what you want in life, you know what you at least at the minimum you know what you don't want. So if you know you don't want that, and this place is doing everything that you don't want, or these people are doing everything that you don't want, then you're probably gonna have to
Yeah.
start making that shift. So,
Just when you think about this, like I say, everything is a seed, right? Everything
hmm
is a seed that's going to produce a harvest. So you talked about watching TV. Man, I can sit here for 4 hours and watch these shows. I can watch them back to back, right? But what is that going to? It's going to harvest something. But is that whatever it harvests? Maybe it's just entertainment. Maybe it's just, oh, it just made me laugh, and that's what we. Oh, it just made me laugh. I'm just relaxing, right? Or I can take those same 4 hours and go read a book that somebody took the time to write about 20 years of their experience, 15 years of their experience, 10 years of their experience, and you're telling me I can get 20 years worth of gain in 4 hours of reading? So, is my harvest going to be better from reading this book or watching 4 hours of TV? And once you start equating it like that, is my 2 hours of gossiping with you going to produce a better life in me, or this conversation of listening to this podcast, listening to uh, this audio book? because we're all, this is what I tell my clients all the time, we're all equal in time. We're equal in time. We all get the same 24 hours a day, the same 168 hours a week, the same 8,064 hours a year. We all get the same time. The difference is how you invest that time. That's the difference. That's the game changer, right? That's the game. I sit on the couch for 4 hours, or I go to the gym for 4 hours. It's the same 4 hours. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same 4 hours. I read this book for an hour, or I watch this TV show for an hour. It's the same hour. The individuals are going to have different results because of what they did with the hour.
I love that. Love that. And again, I know my listeners are being blessed with what you've shared, and I know I am too, because there are some things that, you know, that can definitely I can shift those priorities and make better use of the time. Because so that's why I love what you said, that if nothing else is equal amongst us all, regardless of our backgrounds, financial conditions or educational experiences or otherwise, we all only get the same 24 hours.
Same 24 hours, my
That
man.
that's that level ground that we can all, where we all are equal. So like as you said, what am I doing with my 24 versus in comparison to that next person, in comparison to the next person? If you see somebody doing some big things, not, and again, not focusing in on, trying to be like them per se, or being envious or jealous of what they have, but truly understanding, okay, if you see that they got something that you would love to have, okay, well, have you taken the time to, like you said, to pick their brain? Have you taken the
Mm-hmm.
time to pay attention to what their practices are? And do those practices align from what you can observe or what
Mm-hmm.
they've shared with you? Do they align with how God would want us to walk? And if they do
Mm-hmm.
align with that, then that's probably a great confirmation for you that I might need to do a little bit more of that if I'm not doing it currently right now. I might need to swap out some of that time, and it doesn't have to be in all honesty, and I have to that's something I have to even remind myself sometimes. Um, you know, it doesn't have to be an overnight transformation.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been doing a certain habit, and it wasn't the best habit, it's going to take a little bit of
It's
time
gonna
to
take
break
time.
out of that. So if you got to do it in increments, like
Mm-hmm.
just use the TV example. If I got to trade off an hour of that TV time for an hour of reading time, I start there, and I build some momentum. If I got to trade off an hour of other useless time that's not really adding, the empty calorie time, and I
Yeah.
replace it with something that's got some protein, some substance to it, some muscle to it, then
Yeah.
then I can do that. So it's you got to get started somewhere,
Yeah.
and then
You
you just
know,
continue to build on that.
I tell people, you know, you just got to change it up, right? I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to make TV a reward. So for every hour that I read, I get to watch so much TV,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I just make it a game to myself. So if I want, man, Netflix just came out with this series. Oh man, okay, each episode is 45 minutes. Okay, for every episode that I want to watch, I got to put an hour in the books. So boom, I read my hour. I get to watch an hour of TV.
Like.
Oh, another episode came out. I got to go read another hour. So we're not saying you can't. You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
just got to ask yourself, am I at least putting some good stuff? I can't just have all bad stuff in there. I'm not saying TV is bad or anything like that. I'm just saying you got to put the other stuff in you too, right? You got to have a healthy consistency. And so yeah, you're absolutely right, man.
I love that. I love that, man. Well, Dr. Moreland, this has been a powerful time with you, man. I've appreciated so much your story, your journey. As I said, I had my expectations coming in, and you have far exceeded that.
I appreciate that, man.
Blessing my audience, blessing me. I'm so glad that I was able to make this connection with you, and definitely thankful that you were kind enough to accept the invitation to be on the show, because again, you have definitely been a blessing, and definitely have dropped some gems on us that we can apply immediately to our respective lives and situations. So I'm so much appreciative of that, and know that anytime you want to come back on the podcast, you have an open invitation to do that, because I know that you can. There's so many other topics and subject matters that we could probably tap into that would further, um, you know, uh, be of encouragement and inspiration to those who are tuning in, including myself. But
Appreciate
as
that, man.
is absolutely, man, absolutely. But as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, before we let you go, I do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to acknowledge you, to lift you up, to love on you, brother. So if you got anything that's coming up, or going on right now, or
Yeah.
coming up, be it professionally and or personally, that you'd love to share with us, please share with us because we want to know how to keep touch with keep in
Yeah.
touch with you, follow along with what's going on, and how to support that. And if nothing more, just keep you lifted. So what can we look forward to that's going on with Dr. Moreland that we need to be watching out for?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So just all across social media, I would love for you to connect with me and follow me. You can follow me at Dr. Will Speaks, the at sign DrWillSPKS, Dr. Will Speaks at Dr. Will Speaks on all social media platforms, and then the website is drwillspeaks.com. We're always offering different training events. We have a speakers academy. So if you are a speaker and you're looking to further your speaking career, you want to build your business, your brand, and your bank account, we invite you to be a part of our Genius Speakers Academy. We do our next open enrollment is going to be in April of 2025. So if that interests you, please check that out on the website, drwillspeaks.com. Shoot me a DM, say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. I'm interested in your academy or whatever other trainings, and then we'll put you on our get you on our list so you can stay connected. And yeah, so I'm very easy. I'm very sociable. I'm on all the different platforms very actively, and would love to connect with you.
Absolutely. So, to my listeners, you heard it right here. He's told you how to stay connected with them, how to follow up, in the works that he's doing. And of course, if you personally want to invest in any of his products or services, you know how to connect with him accordingly. And to his point, to what he just said, very sociable, very easy. Like I said, somebody like Dr. Moreland, being so impactful, being so connected with the masses out here. You don't always have the opportunity to connect with somebody like this, and they're easy they're easy not only to connect with, but they respond to you and pour into you and share with you. And this brother was very easy to communicate with. I'm sure he gets inquiries all the time from all walks of life, and he was very swift and eager to connect back with me. And again, thankful that he was gracious enough to accept the invite. So I don't take that lightly at all. So what he's sharing with you is the real deal. If you reach out to him, he's going to talk to you, and he's going to make himself available and open. And you can't ask for anything more than that. So again, man, I appreciate you being on. And to my listeners, if you've enjoyed our podcast this evening, if you enjoyed the sharing of the stories, the dropping of the gems and the nuggets that have gone on this evening, you like what we're doing here, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift. We take opportunities to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to let it all hang out in the most raw and real way that we can. Just letting you know that, hey, we all go through our moments of challenges and adversities. We're not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. We weren't just born into the world having all the answers or anything like that. We are very real people who go through very real challenges just like everybody else. But one thing that you do need to know is that you don't have to go through life alone in dealing with those moments of adversity and moments of those challenges. There are people out here who want to be of support, want to be of encouragement, but the most important source that you have available to you is God Himself. A relationship with Him is like no other. And if you don't currently have that relationship, today is a mighty fine day for you to make that decision. And I promise you, it'll be the greatest decision, best decision that you will ever make. He loves us unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for us. You can lean on Him, dependent upon Him. Give Him all of your weights, your burdens, your troubles. He'll receive that openly and willingly. And all you have to do is just trust and lean on Him, and He will guide you. He will bring people into your life like He's done for Dr. Moreland, like He's done for me. He will do it for you. Nothing is too big for Him to handle. So definitely take that into consideration if that's not a relationship that you currently have. And I promise you, and I'm sure, again, Dr. Moreland will co-sign on that, it'll be the best decision that you ever make. And we're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know firsthand from personal experiences. He's a way maker and the ultimate provider, unlimited wisdom, all that you could ever ask for and then some. So always take that to heart and keep that in mind, especially as you're dealing with those challenges and moments of adversity. So with that said, remember here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Embrace the 4 P's that we learned tonight. Don't forget those. It can make all the difference in the world. Understand that you have a choice. Understand that you have a choice, and that choice can be game changing, it can be life changing for the good or for the bad. But let it be for your good. Make those adjustments. Take those baby steps in progressing towards the life that you want to have, the life that you want to live, and be willing to accept and receive all that life has to offer. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to always be smooth going. But if you trust in God and let Him lead the way, He will not steer you wrong. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you on our next show. Have a great rest of your evening.